Live and Slate. Dinner. 20. Ten, unmuting.
And welcome to Candidates Corner on LPTV, Libertarian Party Television, a production of the Libertarian Party and Libertarian National Committee. Whitney Billieux serving as that chair. As always, John Gapso is on the big board giving you the infotainment, the graphics, the audio-visual effects that make this interesting, and giving a perspective and a little bit of the backstory of each candidate, the region, the city, the community, wherever it is in the nation they're running. As always, we have a few purposes for this show. We want to give the libertarian community an opportunity to meet our wonderful down-ballot candidates. You will hear repeatedly our mantra that not only are these elected officials and these candidates the very first libertarian candidates that people are meeting, for very often these libertarians are the very first libertarians some folks are meeting out there across the country. We wanted to challenge these folks to incorporate what we call lunch pail issues into their daily discourse, their conversation, their listening tours with the libertarian community, as well as the greater world, and be able to channel, if you will, put these issues into the prism of the libertarian statement of principles, our platform, our approach to life. And of equal importance, we want to create a bond, a recognition from around the country that libertarian candidates in this place and this tonight, running under District 81 of the great state of Tennessee, are just as important to the libertarian movement, the philosophy, our statement of principles, our belief system, our perspective on the nation at large, as candidates perhaps running in their own hometown. Joining us tonight for the very first time is Nick Sawall. He is running for the District 81 Tennessee House. Nick, welcome to Candidates Corner. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, Pat, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So we always kind of start, there's a little bit of a formula to the show, but it works well because it gives us an opportunity to sort of lay out a story, your candidacy. Talk to us about you, your background, what you do now. And you know, as we always say, what was that moment in your life when that light bulb, right? The Bugs Bunny cartoons, the light bulb went off over your head. You realize that, damn, I'm a libertarian. Yikes.
Yeah, that was a scary moment last year. So we'll back up a little bit further than last year. So like you said, my name's Nick Sawall. I was born in South Florida, mostly raised in Jacksonville, Florida. I know we got a big LP presence out in Duval County. That's what I call home. I've lived here in Tennessee for the past 8 years. Prior to that, I was in the United States Army. I did 4 years serving as a communications repair person, and I did a light wheel mechanic as well. I had some mechanic experience prior to the Army, but my military experience is when I started to question the government, so to say. So I like to say I got an inside peek of how stuff worked, and it's all the inner workings. And from the time I enlisted, shortly after I enlisted, I declared myself a registered independent. I was born, I wouldn't say born and raised, but I was raised up in a Republican household in Jacksonville. Dad was pretty right-leaning red. Mom voted for whichever candidate was cuter. Typically ended up being a Democrat. It's just funny how all that works.
Yep.
But I voted red most of my life, or most of my adult life, being in the military. Republicans historically have supported the military and increased pay and all that. So that was it was a key point or a key thing in my life at the time. So since I got out of the Army in 2012, moved to New Albany, Mississippi, lived there for about a year, working at the Toyota plant down there, right outside of Tupelo. And then life brought me here to the Memphis region out in West Tennessee. So I lived in East Memphis for about 8 months and then started moving further and further out of Memphis because Memphis is not the best place. I love West Tennessee, but we got issues out here. But I'm currently in Tipton County, which is the county directly north of Memphis, which is District 81. I've lived out here. I bought this house that I'm in currently last summer, but I've lived in the Millington, which is North Shelby, South Tipton area since 2016. With the libertarian movement, I got formally involved last spring, summer time frame. As we were ramping up to the election, I got dragged into the LP by the meme lords on Facebook. They were posting a lot of relevant stuff that spoke to me. So I started looking into it with the memes, which I just love it. Found out the Jorgensen campaign needed help here in Tennessee. I had some prior experience doing event planning with different nonprofits like St. Jude and Irreverent Warriors, which I will happily talk about with that later. But I volunteered to be the state event coordinator for the Jorgensen campaign. I helped put on the Nashville campaign rally and the one out here in Collierville. The Collierville one was hosted at my VFW post at the time, post 5066. And it was a great turnout. We had about 100 folks show up. I got to sit down with Dr. Joe for about an hour and a half. And we sipped some whiskey and discussed some real life issues. So she was an awesome person to talk to. I loved having that opportunity to converse with her. But I've been invested since then, we'll say.
Excellent. And you and I are both veterans of the Joe Jorgensen campaign. I got to be a project manager on one of those tours. It was, on one hand, it was a incredible challenge. On another level, I met some great people, actually, people like Kennedy Porter and folks like that from down south who did astonishing work. Talk about grace under pressure. In Jess Mears and everybody involved with, if you will, the touring campaign. It was, on one level, I did a 7-city, 3-state, 2.5-day tour. It was more fun and more torture than you could ever imagine. But I understand your events were very, very successful. And
we had a great time. If I didn't have work and I have an 8-year-old daughter, had I not had obligations with her, I'd have stayed on the bus. They said I was more than welcome. So I was about to head to Alabama and Texas with them.
Right.
But life had other plans.
Well, but the great part about the campaign was, and this is one of my favorite memories, was the fact that it was a libertarian-run campaign. A lot of young people, from my perspective, who got really invaluable experience, brought a lot to the table to begin with, and all in all, despite a lot of the challenges, the fact that we're not well funded like the duopoly is, and we've got to face a lot of the same questions about viability, but it was a 50-state campaign, and I believe, and I happen to have enjoyed the Reason magazine article that discussed finding a libertarian base. And we now understand that we have a base of about 2 million people in this country who are willing to vote libertarian for someone who was not, if you will, on the tips of the tongue of every American, but at the same time was in a complete libertarian, unabashed, unapologetic libertarian, and was willing to take the campaign, if you will, to the streets of cities that, again, much like the type of work that you folks and Mr. Jones and all of Tennessee are doing, which is to bring libertarianism to the people, to rip ourselves away from our PCs and our keyboards, and to just deliver a message that I believe our nation's waiting for. Now, talk to me about your community. Well, first, let's lay out the geography of your district. You're running for the Tennessee House, so essentially a General Assembly. It's a bicameral setup. Just give us a little insight into how the Tennessee House works, My understanding is that your former state chair is doing some yeoman's work in terms of running an interest group that works alongside the party and has delivered some successes already in its relative infancy as an organization. So, give us
we're all Tennessee.
Right, exactly. And hats off to him. But give us a little perspective on your community, the makeup of the district, and some of the challenges you're facing.
All right. So Tipton County, like I mentioned earlier, is the county just north of Memphis. So to the south of us, we have Memphis. To the east of us, we have Haywood County. And then north of us, we have Lauderdale County. To the west is the Mississippi River. So we are the absolute end of Tennessee going west. It's a very rural area. We have a ton of farmland. Like I'm out here on 2 acres with a pond in my backyard. So we have a ton of land, great people. You see flags like, where are we right here? We see flags like this one on a lot of houses out here. So that to me just speaks that people are ready and ripe for the liberty movement. So overall out here, from everybody that I've talked to, people just want to be left alone. Like they are definitely of the mind that nobody in Nashville, Washington, anywhere really should be telling anybody else how to live their life. So that I have going for us. We got a lot of people that are starting to get disgruntled with the Republican Party. There's a map. So the Republican, historically out here with the vote, in 2020, 75% of voters voted Republican. So, I mean, it's easy. That's the presidential race. So on any down ballot race, there hasn't been opposition, at least to the seat that I'm running for, since 2012. So back in 2012, the current incumbent, Deborah Moody, she took office. That was a 3-way race between an independent, a Democrat, and her. Since then, she has run unopposed. So I don't know if that speaks to how good of a job she's doing. She's a very lovely lady. I've met her multiple times. We've had a lot of good conversations. Reminds me a lot of my mother. So she's a very, very sweet lady. She's just been in office for 10 years now, coming up this next election, and it's time to move on, in my opinion.
One of the great American motion pictures, a true sophisticated film noir exposing the relationship between the individual and sports, was, of course, the movie The Blind Side. And a scene that I live to live and relive, Michael Oker, Michael, as they say in the movie, blocked a young man out of the football stadium, and to which he replied to his coach that it was time for him to go home. I think personally 10 years is a pretty good stint, and I'm sure she's Kentucky polite, but it's time for her to go home, isn't it?
Yeah. So I had lunch with her before I even announced or intended to run. I just wanted to sit down and see where she was at. I was honestly planning to get involved with the Republican Party just because they're the dominant force out here. But we sat down, and our first conversation was about how she was trying to build almost like a mother-in-law suite and a shop on their property so they could put up the pastors that were visiting from other churches. And the zoning commission and permit office declined her permit because per code or whatever, you weren't allowed to have 2 properties on one, I guess. She didn't really understand why they couldn't, or she couldn't build her own property or build her own structure on her own property. So I was like, well, that's a very libertarian opinion you have there, Miss Moody. But we had a good joke out of that. Like we have a lot of stuff in common, which is great. But like just I don't want to speak bad about this woman at all because she's a very, very sweet lady, and I hope I don't come off as speaking bad on her, but she's just not very active and doesn't seem very initiative driven, I will say.
Right.
So it's very sit back and enjoy the ride, it seems, but I'm definitely ready to fight for our community for sure.
Well, and 2 trivia aspects, if you will, of your community. You folks, I didn't realize this until lately. You're the home of Covington, Kentucky, which I believe was in the news in the last year or so. And also, if you will, I believe Western Kentucky University is somewhere near you folks.
Yeah, it's a little bit north of us.
Right, which is a football powerhouse traditionally amongst smaller Division I, Division II colleges. And my alma mater actually played them, as I remember correctly, a long time ago in a national championship for Division II, and we lost. So that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, our local Memphis team, the University of Memphis, which is my alma mater, they have a pretty good football program.
Yeah,
we're doing some things.
Well, now that brings up a perspective. First of all, from a media perspective, there's a couple of newspapers. There's the Sun and something called the Daily Memphian. What would you consider the newspaper of record in the greater Memphis? 'Cause you're sort of an exurb, I guess they would call it, a distant suburb of Memphis. Is that a fair statement?
We have a lot of folks that live in Tipton County but work out of Memphis, like myself. Commercial Appeal is a big newspaper. Actually, in Tipton County, we have our own paper, which is the Leader. So that's a good one. I'm sure we can find a couple articles from there.
Okay.
But Commercial Appeal, Daily Memphian, those are the big ones out of the Memphis area.
Okay. And what would you say is the leading export or the leading business? What drives the finances of your county and your district?
In the district, we have Unilever and Mueller Brass are the big companies. Like I said, it's mostly rural, so we have a lot of farmland. That's definitely our number one export. But Unilever they do ice cream, and they have a very chilled plant up there. This blue Oval City, the Ford plant, that's expected to have a pretty big impact on our area. So that'll actually be in Haywood County, which is next door. And from what I've been hearing, with redistricting, District 81 will absorb part of Haywood County.
Okay.
I'm very interested to see how that plays out in January.
Many states are going through this. Well, I would say that all states are going through this redistricting process. Given the recent release of the census, did your community, the greater District 81, did they grow? Was there actual population growth?
So technically we shrunk, but it was by like 120 people. We had communities within the county grow. So Atoka grew at like 15%. Don't quote me on that. I looked at it when it first came out, and that was 2 months ago now. So Covington, which is the capital of Tipton County, you would say it shrunk significantly. Atoka and Mumford grew. I'm in unincorporated, or Drummond's is a small town. I don't even know. We don't have any local town government in Drummond's. So parts of the county grew and other parts shrunk, but overall the population stayed about the same.
Okay. What's on the mind of taxpayers, voters, citizens? You're running for the General Assembly. We had a little talk offline about this. So, it's clear your decisions and your stances in terms of the campaign are going to be driven by, if you will, a local reflection on state level issues.
Right.
So we always have to talk about the Rona, the COVID, and folks' reaction to that. My understanding is that the governor just released, or is about to release, the mandate on masks for children, which is a blessed event. But what other issues are really on the minds of voters in District 81?
A lot of people I've talked to are very pro legalization of marijuana. I still haven't sat down with our current sheriff yet. I've spoken with him a couple times, and I just need to schedule a time to meet with him. So I don't want to put any words into his mouth, but I'm curious as to his enforcement level that they're doing on marijuana right now. But it's my understanding that they're not currently worried about low-level marijuana offenses. So that being the case, I'm not sure why it continues to be illegal in this great state of Tennessee, which is it's definitely an agricultural powerhouse. And with legalization, we could have so much brought into our economy just with the growing of this one plant, with the marijuana, hemp, all of it. So that's definitely on my forefront. Reducing restrictions on like farm to table type stuff. So I've heard about this and I've briefly read up on it, but it's illegal to sell like raw milk, stuff like that.
Mhm.
And there's just no reason it should continue to be so.
Mhm. How about education? How are the schools in your district, and just generally speaking, what role does the state of Tennessee play in education, um, uh, in the management and the financing of education?
Yeah. So we have our local board of education. Actually, just in this special session we had last week before last, they passed a new bill that will allow school board races to be a partisan race. So to run for your now you'll run for the local school board. You have to declare yourself as a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent. So the Tipton County Republican Party, they've already announced they're going to primary every race. Right now, the school board's a hot mess, mostly over the masking issues. So even when the county mask mandate lifted, the school board voted to mask all the kids indefinitely until they revoked it. So I believe with the latest mandates and laws from the House, that is up now that has been signed. But there was always an option to opt out, which I'm so over COVID. And that's the general belief of most people in this district that I've talked to is we're just over it.
Tennessee is a state, and maybe we could touch about a little bit for Tennessee, the group that was set up. What is the tax structure like? Typically, what is the sales tax rate for most parts of the state? Everybody thinks everywhere that they're the longest suffering, most heavily taxed communities.
Yeah. So Tennessee doesn't have an income tax, so your income isn't touched.
Wow.
But
Okay.
at least with the Memphis region and up here in Tipton County, it's between 9 and 9.5%. So you're adding a dime for every dollar you spend to go to the local governments. Right now, what I actually just learned about this last week, but over a third of Tennessee's budget is coming from the federal government. So that is not something I like at all. Anybody I talk to doesn't like it at all. It's very, very hard for our legislators and our governor to tell the federal government, hey, we're not going to do what you tell us to do, but oh wait, keep giving us money.
Mhm.
So it's to the tune of like 14 or 15 billion dollars we're getting from the Fed this year, like this fiscal year. And then last year, I believe it was in the 33% range. So that's something I definitely want to fix. I don't know how we're going to do that just off the bat, because 14 to 15 billion dollars is a very large chunk of change. But that's definitely going to be a priority, is getting Tennessee financially independent and away from relying on the federal government for our funding.
Wow. Now, is that education, highway financing, the whole Megillah?
It's the whole thing. So I'm not sure. Like I was looking at the budget the other day, just because on the website, the Tennessee website, you can look up Tennessee budget, and it'll show like the big breakdowns. Let's see if I can pull that up real quick.
Mm-hmm. By the way, you folks are pretty close to the Arkansas border, right? What is
The Arkansas border is the Mississippi River.
Okay. So are consumption taxes like sales tax and gasoline taxes and sin taxes, are they lower in Arkansas, or are they typically higher than in Tennessee? Is there sort of a border war going on there at all?
I know Arkansas has a income tax, so
Mhm.
I don't go over into Arkansas too much. So on that map, the only way to get to Arkansas is to go up to Dyer County, Dyersburg up there. There's a bridge up that way, or there's two bridges over Memphis that get into the Arkansas area. So from my house to get into West Memphis, it's about an hour.
Wow. Okay.
So I typically don't go that way too often. Plus, I don't know if y'all heard about the I-40 bridge conundrum, but
Yeah.
there was a crack in the bridge, and that shut down I-40 bridge for 6 months. And then come to find out, they did an investigation, and that crack's been there since at least 2016.
Excellent. I haven't said this on the show in a while, but I think we have to give them an honorable mention for more roads, right?
Good job building the roads.
Good job, Brownie. What was that W who said that? It's just interesting. In New England, where the states are a lot smaller, I live in Socialist Workers' Paradise of Rhode Island. And we just simply, incredibly enough, Massachusetts, AKA Massachusetts, is cheaper on consumption taxes. So no one in Rhode Island with in 3/4 of this 44-mile blot on America, no one buys stuff in Rhode Island, which of course has all of the intended effects, which is to crucify the poor people who are trying to do business in Rhode Island. It's amazing that this patchwork quilt of taxation just creates so much economic chaos and disruption.
Right, so back on that budget, I got the 21-22 budget highlights pulled up. So it's giving $71 million to fully fund the state share for the BEP. That's probably some education for K through 12 education. It's giving a 4% raise to teachers. We're putting $100 million in our rainy day fund. $931 million for capital maintenance and improvement. $5 million for a healthy healthcare safety net. $7 million to extend postpartum care for up to 12 months under 10 care. $24 million for rural opportunity site grants. $100 million for local infrastructure grants. $30 million to eliminate deferred maintenance at state parks.
You're muted.
That's most of it.
The goodie bag goes on and on and on, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it's the equivalent. It's the high school equivalent of promising Taco Tuesday and Taco Wednesday. All right.
Adding up all those highlights, like there's the one that's $100 million. I see a $930 million. Like most of these are single to double digit million. So this is like maybe 1.3, 1.4 billion out of our $34 billion budget. So for being the highlights, that's a very small amount.
Yeah, no, it's and the devil's in the details. We call it in Rhode Island making the sausage. And the what you'll find is when you're elected to the Tennessee House, you'll get to be intimate with those people who make the sausage, who make the natural skin casing, and supply all the unnatural meat byproducts, if you will, to the budget. Folks, if you're just joining us, Nick Sawall is running for the Tennessee State House, the big, as we call it, Tennessee 81, Western Tennessee, sort of the exurbs of Tennessee, Western Tennessee, heading towards the Mississippi River and the Arkansas border. Let's talk about the structure of the campaign itself. Do you have a team working behind you? Now, you've got, at this point, about a little less than a year left.
Right.
With a lot of time, but it'll be amazing how quickly it goes by. It's light speed until the last week and a half, which everyone who's ever run a campaign tells me, then slows down. And then you're just feeling every bit of the pressure to get things done. So tell me about when you started, what was the run up to you deciding to run? And, in terms of organization, what have you structured so far?
All right. So right now I've been getting most of my help from the Shelby County LP. Michael Wilson, he used to be the head of that, but now he's our vice chair for the state LP, so LPTN. I talk to him multiple times a week, sometimes daily. So he is my campaign manager. He's run a mayoral campaign for himself, and he's helped numerous candidates get off the ground and get running. Other than that, I'm just getting little help from Shelby County LP, and then I'm in the process of standing up Tipton County LP. So we've had monthly meetings the past couple months. We have the same 4 or 5 people showing up, which is great. Trying to get them into a leadership position so I can step back, let them run it, and I can support them and then focus on my candidacy.
Right.
So with my candidacy, I'd been spitballing for a couple years. With COVID last year, that was really the drop in the bucket where I said, all right, it's time to do this, because as we all know, our government was deciding who was essential, who was not essential, who's allowed to earn a paycheck, who's not allowed to earn a paycheck. And that's just inexcusable for me. Like, it just blew my mind that people were allowing our government to dictate their lives like this.
Right.
So that's when I decided enough was enough and it's time to step up.
Excellent. It's so important. I was just having this conversation with a young man who's running for local office here in Rhode Island. And he was talking about, well, if I run, what's the benefits? What, it'll be tough for me the first time out. I said, the big takeaway, particularly from your first run, is that let's just say you're advocating for an issue, which is lowering the sales tax so that it's a more competitive retail marketplace, right? You make those announcements as a libertarian. And, I had the opportunity a few weeks ago to spend some time at the New York Libertarian Freedom and Liberty Summit, and we talked about earned media. It's a challenge right out of the box. I have a roadmap on how to do it. We've been able to do it successfully, but it takes a lot of work to be paid attention to in sort of on a purely issues basis. You run for office, and all of a sudden, everything you say is put under a microscope and listened to. It gives you a pulpit that is unparalleled in the sense of being able to deliver the libertarian message, because very often the very first opponents are going to say, well, you have no experience in this real world, and they're going to essentially change and create a false narrative for you about what libertarians believe in. You running for office, and all of a sudden people are listening. And that's the first beauty of you being an active candidate as you are and running a legitimate campaign as you're doing. And so that alone is an unparalleled opportunity, is critical to our party's success. Candidates for local office are the heroes of our movement because of your ability to deliver on a uniquely personal level our philosophy, our statement of principles, our message. So that's why we do this show. That's why we do just about everything we do, to try and empower down ballot candidates to build that base, as we're doing. But 150 plus candidates elected of a variety of levels just a few short weeks ago. Libertarianism is now not an academic subject to be discussed in poli-sci classes. Libertarianism is part and parcel all of a sudden nationwide of school boards and town council meetings. And that's when it gets real. That's when all of a sudden you have a unique ability to impact people's lives through your practice in the real world of the libertarian movement, and libertarian philosophy that is, again, unparalleled. So that's why you guys are our quiet heroes, literally taking it to the streets. Now, tell me, do you have a campaign manager lined up? Are you doing fundraising? Give us a sense of all that.
Yeah. So Michael Wilson is my campaign manager. He's our vice chair for the state of Tennessee. I'm ready and willing to go with fundraising. A website you can give donations on. I just finished wrapping up a stint that I was doing with a nonprofit called Irreverent Warriors. So for the past 3 years, I was their area, and then this past year became their state coordinator. So their mission is to bring veterans together using humor and camaraderie to improve mental health and prevent veteran suicide.
Wow.
Which is a very near and dear cause to me.
Absolutely. That's outstanding.
Since I announced my candidacy earlier this year, I immediately started training my replacement within the organization. So I had to specifically train somebody to take over for the Memphis region, where I was the local coordinator for. And then I recommended my number 2, who'd been helping me, to take over the state slot, Chrissy Payne. So
Let me jump in. Let me jump in for a second.
Yeah.
This is the status, the support, the care and feeding, the love of veterans is a critical part of our movement, both as reflecting the nature of communities nationwide, but also reflecting in the impact of our foreign policy, but also reflecting our desire to end all wars.
Mhm.
What was it as a veteran of our military service? What was it, or did it have a part in you becoming a libertarian? Because so many of our new members, through Mises, through a number of outreach efforts, are in fact young veterans of the Gulf and the Mideast wars.
Yeah, I'm part of the LP Veteran Caucus as well, so that's a growing thing. I'll give them a shout out real quick. But yeah, just all the fraud, waste, and abuse within our military is disgusting. So how the military budget works is it's a top down budget. So you get your amount, and then you have the year to spend it. If you don't spend that amount of money, then you don't get that same amount of money next year, and you can't get an increase. So the fiscal year for the military runs October to September. So come into September, if there's money left over, they're just buying dumb stuff. Like, oh my goodness, we wasted so much money on just stuff that wasn't needed. But if we didn't spend it, then the unit would lose the money, and we wouldn't potentially have that money for next year.
Right.
So much fraud, waste, and abuse. It's ridiculous. And there's while you're in it, especially as a low E3, E4, I got out as an E4 specialist. There's nothing you can do about it at that level. That's just how it works. So the only way to change it is from the legislative side, I believe, and getting the leaders on board. Like we spend more money as a country on our military than the top 15 or 20 next countries combined. Like it's just disgusting. But that was a big part of it. Then in Afghanistan, I was there in 2011. I mean, it's a tribal war. Like, not to get too in depth into the foreign policy of why we were there, but while I was over there, we got bin Laden, and from all accounts, that was the mission. That's what we were trying to do, was get bin Laden as retribution for the attacks on 9/11. So, like, it was a weird day because apparently they launched out of the AO that I was in. So I was in eastern Afghanistan, right on the Pakistan border. Salerno was our hub. I was at Camp Clark. But they launched, I guess, out of Salerno and went and did the whole SEAL team thing and got him. And then we saw him flying back over early in the morning, walking to the motor pool. And it was like 9 helicopters. And it was a weird thing to see. And then sure enough, Obama was on the TV a couple hours later saying, hey, we got him.
Right.
I'm not sure why that didn't end the war in Afghanistan, and we just got out a couple months ago. But from all accounts, we should have been done there. But the Afghan people, overall, they were great people, and they just didn't want us to be there. Like, they were appreciative that we were building roads and stuff, but like it was not – they didn't want us. And that we were an occupying force, and I didn't really appreciate that while I was over there.
And I think we can all agree that the best way to respect our veterans' efforts is, quite frankly, to have fewer of them, and particularly in these ultra extra legal, quote unquote, engagements, police actions. You fill in the blanks. I appreciate that kind of conversation because, again, you reflect a perspective that a lot of people like me talk about, but it's not a lived experience for me. And so I can only react to your life and your lived experience while overseas. So tell me about how the campaign is going. I mean, are you able to, in your community, both geographically, because sometimes when you're in rural areas, it's a full day just to get out sometimes to 10 or 20 people. Are you able to physically interact with people? Have you done any listening tours? And where are you spending your time? Where are you investing your time in terms of reaching out to potential voters?
So right now I'm mostly just operating on Facebook, just because of how everything is. When I see local festivals, I'll request to get a tent and we just had a big one last month called Mumford Celebrates. Mumford's one of the small towns out here, and they do an annual get-together where they have a vendor fair, and there's probably 2,000 people out there, which is a big turnout for our county of 60,000. And that was a great event. So I had my table set up, I had my flag set up. I keep pointing the wrong direction. And I made some quick pamphlets of just bullet points of what's on my website, had all my socials on it, and I just talked to people. I was set up directly across from the Tipton County Republican women. So that was a fun day. They walked over and we chatted. They actually invited me out to their next meeting, which is actually tomorrow morning. So I'm going to be a guest speaker with them. They're not officially affiliated with the Republican Party, but they are a group of conservative women.
Right.
So the lady I talked to, she's actually my ex-wife's husband's mother or aunt, one of the two. So we're indirectly related. That's just what I love about this small town is you know everybody one way or another.
Well, I'm curious, what kind of message are you planning to deliver them? Because it's a wonderful opportunity, and it's great for your candidacy that you're getting that type of in-person conversation going. But what do you expect to talk about with them? What do you think is the issues that they're going to want to engage on?
So my big push is that both the Republicans and the Democrats are a broken system. They're two sides of the same coin, and I'm just pushing the duopoly message that we're all very well aware of. It's just time for a change. So I'll likely be running as an independent candidate rather than a libertarian. That's still up in the air. If I do decide to go libertarian, I only need 500 signatures, so that's not a deal breaker. It's just from a strategic standpoint, the National Party is questionable at times, and being a young veteran, my worry is that would be an attack point once they actually start to fear me. So we're still debating on that from a strategic standpoint with my campaign manager. But the idea is the Republicans, because the Tipton County last election voted 75% Republican. So my argument to them is the Republican Party at the national level actually representing you and how you feel. So there's a lot of disenfranchised Republicans out here, myself included, that just don't like it. So the Republican Party told me that I am not eligible to be a Republican because I speak out against the Republican Party, for one, and I don't qualify based on my voting history because I voted in the Democratic primaries the past 2 cycles, voting against candidates with a strategic vote. But they're definitely aware of me, and they're tracking me pretty hard.
I hear that. Media. We were talking a few minutes ago about newspapers and media in the area. Do you have a strong talk radio culture, or are there local radio stations in your area?
We have a local radio station that's starting up. I talked to them about 6 months ago, and they were hoping to be in production by the end of the year. He loved the platform and said he'd love to have me on to talk about different stuff. I'm doing every podcast I can do. So like this one, I talked on the Veteran Caucus one briefly. The Leader, the local newspaper out here in Tipton County, I've spoke with their main publisher a few times. So as we get closer, she said she'd be more than happy to do a candidate profile on me. But mostly I'm just planning on going door to door and knocking on all 60,000 doors in this next year.
Is there an opportunity for debates? Traditionally, have there been debates locally?
There haven't been debates because there hasn't been any opposition since 2012. So like I have the current incumbent. I got her phone number in my phone, so I could call her up and be like, "Hey, do you want to do this?" We're on a very friendly basis currently. Right. So I don't think it would be I would love to debate her because while we agree on a lot of stuff, we have a few key disagreements. So I just ran into her at the Veterans Day parade last weekend, and I was talking with her husband, and it was my first time meeting him. but he said his brother actually died from opioid overdose or something similar to that here last year, and he was a veteran and he got prescribed all these pills from the VA. So I used that opportunity to be like, look, if marijuana was legal here, he could have got off all those pills and might still be with us.
Right.
And then he kind of shut down at that part because I said we should legalize weed. So it's just crazy how against it some of these people are. Like, I've seen it save my friends' lives. Like, they have gotten off 10 to 15 different medications just with a plant. So that's back to the veterans issues. That's definitely where my passion is. So it's something I'm very upfront about. We'll put it that way.
And when you become a state legislator, is there in fact a veterans committee at the state level to support people?
I don't believe so in the state house. I don't think we have a veterans caucus. There are multiple veterans in office. I'm following a few of them, so I'd love to create one. I'm personally a member of the Veterans of Foreign War, so I know they're a congressionally chartered lobbying organization. So I'm working. They're not allowed to endorse me as a candidate, but I'm in discussions of how we can potentially work together long term to get good legislation passed. I know we just had some stuff passed this past couple of days at the national level about veterans bills and presumptive diseases and all kinds of good stuff.
Have you reached out to Veterans Committee? I know that sometimes this is an uncomfortable subject because I'm not sure if VFW or American Legion will actually endorse candidates, but have you reached out to the veterans community in your area for volunteers and or fundraising?
So we have a Veterans Council meeting tomorrow, actually. So that was going to come up. I've talked to people offline about it, just like before the meeting or after the meeting, because really you're not supposed to bring up politics during the meeting.
Right.
So it's a touchy subject. So
understood. It can be a brutal subject because in a real sense, it's politics that brought so many of our veterans to a breaking point in regards to where they were deployed,
right,
and the manner and method of the deployment, and quite frankly, how they've been supported after their deployment, both active duty and stateside. But at the same time, I think we all understand as libertarians that we appear to be the only folks who are on a global scale, and I know there's a number of people across the country who are of all parties who support our veterans, but from a philosophical and a platform level, we appear to be the only major party that is desperately concerned for the plight of our veterans and the fact that we create so many. Right. And it's somebody at some point. And this, we tend to think of this in a Gulf War or a Southwest Asian perspective. My father's 98. He's a double Purple Heart winner, a veteran. As he mentioned, when I asked him once as a young lad why we never went camping, he went camping once for 4.5 years. He started in North Africa and did the entire walking tour of Western Italy with two unexplained, surprise side trips to Switzerland to recover from getting shot twice by the Germans. Right. Incidentally, years later, when Germany invented a slogan for tourism, "Isn't Germany romantic?" he was less than impressed. We'll just leave it at that, okay? Yeah. But the VA largely ignored him until he was about 92, despite the fact, again, shot twice. And he was never the guy looking for anything from anybody. Right. But there's the decency of the acknowledgement of the issues that people walked away with. In his case, given what he saw, what he did, he was very fortunate, but he did walk away with wounds, and he did walk away with a substantial hearing loss. Because, I don't know, cannons going off next to you in the 40s, acoustic headphones weren't a big thing, right, particularly in the theater combat. And I'm being sarcastic only because the issue is so damn serious. So it's tough, and it's a challenge. I ask every veteran who's running as a candidate the same question, because I'm trying, and I think a lot of us are trying to get a sense of the right way to engender support from the literally hundreds of thousands of American veterans going back from World War II still till literally the current day, from if you will, from North Africa to Fallujah and everywhere in between and around. And I'd be curious as feedback from you as the campaign goes on to see how that outreach works and what message resonates, because they're a powerful force for us, and there's many amongst us, and we owe our veterans a debt of gratitude for the legitimate fights they fought. We owe them a great deal of empathy for the false wars that have been foisted upon them. And again, I applaud your service and also your activism post-service.
Yeah.
We're kind of coming to the end, and I could, you and I could probably talk for hours on the air, but I want to make sure we get in a very important segment, and we call it shameless self-promotion. So my final question for you before we go into shameless self-promotion, where you're going to tell us exactly how people can support you in infinite detail. But how is the fundraising going? Do you have a concerted fundraising effort up yet? And what type of steps are you going to take about that?
Yeah. So far, I've mostly done passive fundraising. I haven't really done any active fundraising, mostly because I've been wrapping up Irreverent Warriors and getting that going. So I have one current recurring donator, Zach. He's a very great guy out of Memphis. We've had many discussions on different policy issues. So he is one of my favorite people because he has a recurring donation set up from my website to donate, and it'll automatically come out every month and come right to me.
Right.
So other than that, I've gotten $20 here, $100 here, just from a couple people. But for the most part, the campaign so far has been self-funded. So I took my stimulus check that we got back in February and dumped that into getting my website going and filing all my filing fees and getting that done.
Right.
Thanks, Biden. Thanks, Trump, whoever that was.
Right. And this is a critical point. You'll hear me say this every week. You work on fundraising for one obvious, one not so obvious issue. Obviously, what's the cliche? Money is the mother's milk of all politics. Door hangers, Google AdWords, Facebook boosts, the occasional spot. If you score, maybe a billboard.
So right now, I have an immediate need. I just did the Jess Mears, who you mentioned earlier. She put on a seminar on Tuesday about digital marketing and branding and all that. So I attended that class, and I hired what was her name? I want to say Caitlin. So I hired her, and that's a $600 bill that I have coming up. So I paid my $150 deposit yesterday, but I'm going to owe another $450 just to get the website and my branding and all that all together. If you can pull back the website back up, if you click on that Free Ponies button, that goes to PayPal. If you go over to the donate button, that's through Anecdote. So I believe that has a couple different or lower fees. Since I built my website, I can't figure out how to get that banner to come off, but we would definitely prefer people donate from the donate button up there at the top. If you click on that, so you can donate right there, and then click that make it recurring button, and you will be my next best friend who will get shout outs on every podcast that I do. If you're in my area and you want to volunteer, on that homepage, there was a spot where you could put in your name, your email. If you click on home right there, so right under minimum government, maximum freedom, if you fill that out, do the little simple math problem, click here with me, that'll go right to my inbox, and I will get you on our mailing list.
That's it. That's interesting. That's a great way to screen out liberals, for the very simple fact that it's clear, if anyone's listened to any of the national conversation over the last few weeks, that they cannot add. And that may be a simple 6 + 7 may hang
Equals
them up for a
free.
week. Equals free, right?
Equals $0. It doesn't cost anything.
Who needs who needs antivirus software? Who needs blocking software? Who needs VPNs? Nope. Just give them a math problem.
Right.
True or false? Inflation is caused by A, printing money's like SOB, or B, inflation is good because that raises salaries.
Now they're saying that rich people are the ones talking against inflation. Like I just don't understand what they're trying to do.
They're making it up as they go along. That's why they've run out of plausible responses, and now they're just kind of winging it. Yeah. Oh my God.
Oh, so my next big event. Let me plug that before
absolutely
we go on. My phone just died. Let me pull up my calendar. It'll be January 8th.
Mm-hmm.
So for governor out here in Tennessee, we got a guy named John Henry. So he's running as a constitutional Republican. I'm not endorsing him, but he's running against the duopoly. So we're going to partner up. He's a Marine veteran. Him and I are going to tag team this event coming up January 8th. And it's going to be a great event. So For All Tennessee, who you mentioned earlier, they're joining us as well. Overall, we're just trying to get people to realize that the Republican Party is not who they need to be voting for anymore.
And what was that date again?
January 8th. So from my Facebook page, I have an event under the events tabs for that.
Cool. Now I'm going to make the offer to you that we make to all libertarian candidates. If you do a 30-second spot, send it to, whether it be on Facebook, a focused sort of ad style spot, share it with me, and we'll put it up on this show to get to people. If you're running a money bomb or an event like you are that week, just remind us and send me the information, and we'll make sure that it's posted nationwide. So we give people an opportunity to maybe send a couple of dollars your way, and also, quite honestly, to build your brand so that people understand exactly what you stand for and understand that you are part of the future of this party, and you're an important part of the future of this party. So, what I'm saying to you and to candidates at large, allow us at LPTV to amplify the events that you're having. If you're in a debate, we want to know about it. If you're in a debate and you can videotape it, we want to get a copy. If you're hosting a money bomb, we want to know about it and share it. If you've got an event, a fundraiser out here in Rhode Island, we have this folksy way, we call it a time. If you have a time, we want to talk about it. So it's what we're looking to do is going forward, dedicating the first 10 or 15 minutes of the show, all right, to folks who've been on before or having an event to talk about it. If an affiliate is having one of these Liberty weekends or convention, please let us know, particularly if you've got featured speakers that you want to promote to get people to show up. We're here to work for you.
Yeah.
Right. It is the mission of a political party, it should go without saying, is to get folks with similar belief systems elected to office. And by electing you to office where you can steward, as opposed to the top-down authoritarian government that is imposed upon us with complete disrespect to, if you will, the will of the ultimate minority, the individual. All right. If we want to fight that, then we have to nationally get behind candidacies like yours. We just have to. And so if we fail to do so, then we will be left behind. Nationally, that Bernie guy made his bones by getting lots of small contributions from, in his case, progressives everywhere. If he puts out the call, you're going to have tens of thousands of people sending him $5, and that translates into one whole hell of a lot of money over time, so that he can maintain a national profile. We don't, listen, we're just asking people to send candidates like yours. If you're in Washington State or if you're in Florida, one less trip to Dunkies, because we're not a Starbucks political party, are we? One less trip to Dunkies or whatever, and get a coffee instead of a latte. And what is those old Sally Struthers ads? For just $4 a day, you can feed a libertarian candidate, right? But on a serious note, that's what we need. The recognition that your candidacy, your ability to bring to Western Tennessee, and Tennessee's got great Libertarian Party doing all sorts
do.
of. You really do. I bring up these individual affiliates not because to patronize people, but the recognition, and I've had Mr. Jones on the show, the recognition that between you and these other satellite organizations you've been able to set up, whether they be working with veterans or working on incredibly important economic issues, you are changing the world. And what I mean by that is local people now in communities around America will grow to understand and ultimately respect our message of body autonomy, self-ownership, and again, respect for the ultimate minority, the individual, and the role of individual rights in creating a great community that will support, by definition, through the free market, all of us. And what's that old cliche? Rise the tide, lift everyone up, instead of this nonsense that's perpetrated and perpetuated on individuals like us. So, my hat's off to you. I'm really looking forward to following your campaign throughout the year. Get us in the loop on that early January event, and just send us stuff. And if candidates nationally, running for all sorts of office, want to reach out to us, let's be part of the solution together. Let's get away from some of the nonsense that continually ties us up, and let's focus on what's really important, which is, quite frankly, electing you. Okay?
I'm all about it.
Does that sound like a fair value proposition for everyone?
Sounds like a great idea.
Well, and by the way, if there are other volunteers out there who want to reach out to us in terms of running for office and from the great state of Tennessee, then just let us know, and we'll also do what we can to amplify your cause. Listen, we've got a couple of minutes left. Take an opportunity, if you will, give us a little bit of a stump speech. Imagine you're facing a room full of about 50 or 60 folks, most of whom are on board with you. Some folks are meeting you for the first time. Talk to the LPTV audience in the manner that you would talk to them. Just give us a little taste.
All right. Hey, everybody, I'm Nick Sawall. I am a 33-year-old Army veteran who is frankly fed up and tired of how our government's acting. Our government exists to serve the people. So I served in the Army for 4 years. I've served in our local community with various nonprofits. I'm ready to serve us again. So tell me what your issues are. Slide in my inbox, talk to me, reach out. I'd love to talk to every single person and everybody that I possibly can, but we need to get the power back in the hands of our people. So let's do that.
Excellent. Folks, Nick Sawall, he is running for the Tennessee House in the Big District 81. It's an exurb/suburb of the greater Memphis, Tennessee area. He is delivering liberty on a silver platter to the members of his community. And to that, we salute you. One more time, what's the website?
NickSawall.com.
Nick, and that's SAWALL.
SAWALL, yeah.
.com. Nick, congratulations, and look forward to working with you in the future.
Yeah, can't wait to be back.
Folks, you've been listening to Candidates Corner on LPTV, Libertarian Party Television, a production of the Libertarian Party and Libertarian National Committee. Whitney Billieux serving as chair. As always, a big thanks to John Gapsu, who runs the big board. My name is Pat Ford. I am your host most Mondays and every Friday. If you'd like to join us on the air, just reach out to us. I'm all over social media. You can reach out to me on LPTV, or just, my name is Pat Ford again. And amongst the millions of Pat Fords, I'm the only one with a button as an icon that says I'm already against the next war. So just drop into my DMs that way. We'll figure out a way to get you on the air. We'll figure out a way to promote your cause. Affiliates and chairman, we're beating this to death for the first couple of weeks of this next season because we want folks to supply us with videos. We want people to tell us about events that they're having. We want people to tell us about money bombs they are running. We want people to tell us about candidates that are out there on the streets of America delivering our message, well, to everyone. Many times folks who've never even met a libertarian before. Give us the opportunity to work for you. Folks, have a wonderful weekend. Monday night, a special event. We're going to have Ken Moman on, the vice chair of the party. People know him as the driving force, if you will, behind the CRM project. He is going to spend an hour in what I'm going to call Libertarian CRM 101. We're going to start with the basics, talk about what it can do for you, the mechanisms, the development issues, the support, and essentially how to take advantage of this national tool to make it work for your local affiliate. So Ken Moman, the vice chair, is going to be on. Of course, folks, there is a special LNC meeting Sunday night. I would imagine that's going to be on the LNC YouTube page. Please take a moment to watch, a firsthand view, a firsthand perspective of these type of meetings, which have frustrated, quite frankly, a number of people. But the firsthand view can give you an additional perspective as to the issues and inform you. And that's why the Libertarian Party opens these up to the public and gives you a front seat view. So I'll be there. I'm the alternate to Region 8. Rich Bone he's the rep, does a great job. It's great to be in a support role for him. I thoroughly enjoy working with him, and the if you will, the open door policy he has with not just me, but everyone in Region 8, and quite frankly, every libertarian everywhere. So that is Sunday night. Folks, have a wonderful weekend. Let's get out there. Let's hit the streets. The last election, all of its successes is behind us. It's time to hit the streets again, and again to start to deliver the message. It's only a year to go to 2022. These are the elections that will dictate the future of our country, the future of our nation, the future of our community, and quite frankly, the future of our individual lives. Good night.